Welcome to Norse Code, the number one podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I'm your host and producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you guys so much for listening. And at the other end of the tin cannon string, we have our analyst and co-host. You know him from numerous blogs and podcasts around the internet, most notably from the Wide Laughed Substack. Wide Laughed? I'm going to go with Wide Left instead. Sure, why not? Wide Left Substack. He is Mr. Useful Human, Arif Hassan. Arif, apologies for the wide laughed, but I'm sure that everyone is wondering, are you doing okay? This has been a time where people have been making fun of you constantly, whether it's been about the potential of signing Carson Wentz, Trey Lance, or drawing terrible photos of you in the Discord. Are you okay?
So I am so okay, James, that I don't even remember any of those things until you brought them up. I'm so okay that I would be happy if someone kicked me in the head. That's how okay I am, James. I'm doing so great.
You sound like you are just like falling over in okayness right now.
Yeah, the contentment stocks are high.
That's where the vibes take you?
Absolutely not. Oh my god, dude.
I tried for a deep dive there, and I was rewarded. Good.
Yeah, just poke a little bit more, see if we can get a better response.
Look, you don't go to the I
We'll reserve that reference for later.
Yeah. Well, welcome to this episode of Norse Code. Hope you guys are all doing better than Arif. We have I'm trying to get through this. We have a Arif,
you and me both, bud.
We're all doing fine. We have a game to review, a Kirk Cousins injury to go over. We are opening up the Wailing Wall, which we always do when a major player on the team suffers a season-ending injury. We definitely have a Wailing Wall for you here, and then we also have the mailbag as well. But before we start, again, thank you guys so much for listening to Norse Code. If you enjoy the show and would like to help us financially, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can be like Sebastian and Michael Gunther and sign up over on Patreon, over at patreon.com/NorseCode. Thank you guys so much for signing up. You get access to the Discord. You get access to the bonus material. New episode coming out here in the next day or so. Check that out. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode as well. That's a one-time donation. Or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick yourself up a shirt, the Christmas socks, a fantastic... well, you can't get a body pillow. That's like the one thing you can't get on Threadless, despite the number of requests we've had. But you can get like a shower curtain if you really wanted.
You don't need to get a shower curtain. And you may think you want a body pillow, but you don't. What are you going to do with it?
Is that where
Actually, don't tell me. Actually, I don't want to know the answer to that question.
By the way, did you see that Eric Thompson is now on the Discord as well?
Oh, jeez.
Eric Thompson.
Great. That's fantastic.
Eric Thompson and his wine bottle are on the Discord, so check that out.
His wine bottle's there too? Good Lord.
I was trying to convince him that needed to be his account, actually. Or somebody needed to be Eric Thompson's wine towel. That would have been the better way of doing it. So this is over at norsecode.threadless.com. Get access to all of that. And you can buy the merch over at norsecode.threadless.com. All right, so again, we are going to be over at The Damn Grill, 7 p.m. November 17th in Denver, Colorado. Again, 7 p.m. November 17th, The Damn Grill. We will be doing our live show for the Denver game. We will be giving away 2 tickets to said game. You can check it out. There's that should be a hell of a lot of fun over at The Damn Grill. Hoping to see a number of you guys out there for the game, and hoping to see a number of you guys out there for the live show. That should be a lot of fun, and Arif will be in a good mood. Probably. It'll be good.
Can you promise that?
I can... Mood subject to change. There. Better? Better.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's the legal disclaimer that'll get out of trouble for sure.
Excellent. We are not a we are not a vibes podcast.
We're not selling vibes. Vibes not guaranteed.
No. NFTs, yes. Vibes, no. It's an odd mix. But let's get into the show itself. And obviously, the big news. It was confirmed today that Kirk Cousins no longer has both of his Achilles tendons working, which is a hell of a sentence to say. One of them was torn during a non-contact injury, or it was a non-contact injury on the field at Lambeau during the Vikings' victory over the Packers. And normally what we do in this sort of situation is let everyone vent for a moment, take a deep breath, just kind of let it all out, and then we'll analyze it a bit. So let's start it off. We have a couple of these. We just have an ah and a Y, but we have got a couple more in here. For our Reefs, Samsara Corner, should the human urge to find meaning in suffering be combated or indulged?
I'm not like that conversant in Jainism, but in Buddhism, suffering is like an inevitable reality of life, which, I at the moment I think that they've got kind of a point. But it's meaning in suffering, I think, is not really the way to think about it so much as that suffering is just a quality. It's inevitable, right? And so finding meaning in suffering is kind of pointless because it's like finding meaning in, the very nature of existence. And you might as well just do that instead if that's something that you're interested in doing. And so in the rebirth cycle, suffering is in fact one of the elements like that are part of the cycle, like birth, suffering, death. It can replace the word life in some of these. So it's less about meaning and more about embracing its existence more than anything else. So it's less about combating the attempt to find meaning and more indulging in the existence of suffering, than it is to find meaning in it. So meaning, I think, is the wrong way to look at it. But yeah, no, definitely embrace the fact that you're alive, which, cool.
Sometimes overrated, sometimes underrated.
Yeah. The only alternative to suffering in this context is to achieve oneness, right? Is to achieve nirvana, and that would mean being at peace with every element that life has, whether it is suffering and pain or joy or whatever. It is to vibrate with the energy of the universe, right? So suffering is part of that energy of the universe.
Yeah. Well, for a Reef's Classics Corner, which Greek tragedy best represents the 2023 Vikings? Obviously, there is the Iliad with Achilles' death, but what about accounting for the gods punishing Vikings fans' hubris in finally believing in their team?
Would that be hubris? I mean, hubris is like a common element in Greek mythology, right? I'm going to just Google hubris right now, because like it's the thing. No, because like there's
I'm laughing
like
at
a list.
I'm laughing at the idea of Googling hubris to rediscover the definition of hubris. Like just
Well, no, and I also added the words Greek mythology. I wanted to like. I wanted like a list of Greek heroes who fell because of hubris. So obviously there's Achilles, right? But like Odysseus, right? That's a pretty common one. Bellerophon, that's the guy on the Pegasus. That's one. Phaethon, I don't know anything about Phaethon. Let's see. The son of Helios, the god of the sun, Greek hero's name meaning radiant, etc., etc. Phaethon prayed to Helios for some way to prove that he was his father. In pity at his son's plight, Helios swore that he would grant Phaethon one wish, anything he wanted. Phythion asked if he could drive the sun god's chariot through the heavens for a day. Um, okay, I remember this one. Yeah. The horses were unused to his command. They proved too unruly. He drove too close to the earth, scorched the land, and created the Sahara Desert. Arachne, that's a very popular one. That's hubris.
Could we just?
Icarus, that's a pretty common
I'm
one.
literally about to say, could we just accept this is the tale of Icarus and Daedalus? That this is
Yeah, well, Daedalus what didn't have hubris. It was just
well,
Icarus,
no,
I think.
he was trying to warn him.
Yeah.
You're flying too close to the sun. And
yeah,
the Vikings didn't handle a bad team like this for 2 years. They finally do it, and this is what they get.
Yeah, it's been a bit since they put away a bad team, and they finally did it. We all demanded it. At what cost?
And there's the monkey's paw. Would it be good or bad for the bit if the Vikings signed Carson Wentz?
I've been thinking about this like genuinely. Like I've been like, I don't know. And I think that it would probably be bad, but I'm open to all interpretations on this one, just because being required to evaluate Carson Wentz like very analytically and objectively every week, I think would detract from the bit in a way, because the bit is cartoonish, right? It is meant to be like unabashedly biased, and so I think it like ruins a little bit of the magic of just hating NDSU players. Like it's hard enough when like NDSU, like Ben Ellefson, right, are like on the team, and you have to like, well, Ben Ellefson's actually a pretty good blocker, and he can catch a little bit better than you'd expect, and you hate saying it. But you know, when it becomes like somebody who's like the face of NDSU, right, like Carson Wentz or Trey Lance, then it becomes a little bit harder. So I think imagining Carson Wentz coming to the Vikings, great for the bit. Him actually coming to the Vikings, bad for the bit.
Yeah, it's basically like the dog catching the car.
Like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we try to avoid that. Should we blame Creed? Now, important to note, the day after the Kirk Cousins injury, Creed announces a world tour along with Switchfoot opening for them on several dates. The bits are strong here. Very strong. I had joked that this was all leading to some like Creed comeback, and here we are.
Yeah, before the show, James was like, so you know about the Creed news? And I'm like, What Creed news? What news could there possibly be about Creed? They're done. Like the whole point of Alter Bridge is that they're done. And he's like, no, you don't, Arif. You can't get away with this. So he sends me a link. And yeah, they reunited. So I think this has to be Creed's fault.
I rarely angrily send you things.
He was upset. He was like, no, you're not free of this. I saw this and now you have to. And normally that's for like a cursed image on the internet, which in some ways I suppose you could say this qualifies as. But no, this is just about the fact that Creed reunited.
I was upset. Was Kirk the best quarterback in the NFC through the 8 weeks that he played? And will Kwesi try to get a deal on re-signing Kirk after the Achilles? He loves buying low on injured guys.
I mean, as much as I rag on Brock Purdy, I mean, he was clearly more efficient. I would say Kirk is better than Brock, but you know, it would be easy to just say Jalen Hurts and walk away from it. But Hurts has had like a very weird year. He's not been playing as well as he did last year. I don't really know what it's all about. Let me pull up
like the Eagles,
Steven Ruiz's quarterback rankings.
The Eagles in general are having a very odd year of like they only really care in the very beginning or very end of games.
Yeah, it is, which is somewhat reminiscent of last year's Vikings. It is a bit unusual. I think but like the Eagles front is still playing at a really high level, so it's not everybody in the Eagles. But yeah, the quarterback situation is a little bit odd. I'm going to go through because I mentioned Steven Ruiz's quarterback ranking specifically because they've been the subject of controversy over the past couple of weeks. Like they've hit like legitimate like mainstream everything. Like people have asked Brock Purdy about him ranking there. They've talked about it on air. It's very weird. But you go through his rankings and it's all AFC quarterbacks. So you've got Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Herbert, which Lamar Jackson's having an insane year. Lawrence Stafford, which I think that's a bit high. Dak Prescott, also a bit high. And then Jalen Hurts. So in terms of like the year that he's having in the Geno Smith, man, this one's kind of tough. And then Kirk is just behind all of those. Uh, Geno's having kind of a tough year. Hurts is having a weird year. Prescott, I think, is having a pretty decent year, but he's being held back by the way they're calling plays for him. Actually, Ruiz wrote about that. And I just don't know. There's an argument that the year that Kirk is having right now is better than any of those guys. There's an argument, but I wouldn't say it's definitive. The fact that that's an argument could be why this happened. Will Kwesi try to get a deal on re-signing Kirk after the Achilles? He loves buying low and injured guys. It sucks that it's like, yeah, he's kind of predatory in that way. You don't have any leverage to negotiate? Well, perfect timing. I would say that is true for guys where you're really confident in their upside and longevity. If it works out, you can re-sign them long term. People like Marcus Davenport, right? Kirk obviously is 34, right? It's tough to say, hey, this guy's going to have, a long career ahead of him beyond this. So maybe, but I just don't know. And I don't know how aggressively they'll want to use that leverage to push down his contract value. I think they've already learned lessons about being aggressive in pushing down contract value. I think that they realize that while that can be good in the short term, it can hurt in the long term. And we saw that with Daniel Hunter. And we kind of saw that actually with TJ Hawkinson. It can be kind of difficult to do that. I think I don't know, man. Like a healthy Kirk, I think we're like having an interesting conversation about whether they'll re-sign him. This situation is just so difficult to figure out, this re-signing business at this point. They may just have to wait for the results of the year to play out before they make a decision there, which sucks because it's a cop-out, but I think that's the only way they can do it.
Yeah. Do we deserve this for laughing at Rodgers when it happened to him?
Yes.
Why won't God blow up the sun?
He might have. You have to wait 8 minutes to find out, though.
Oh, I suppose, actually. Who has the stronger sense of nihilism, Kirk Cousins or Vikings fans?
So Kirk is not a nihilist. Very clearly not. Because nihilism is not like whatever happens. It's having a core belief in nothing in a lot of. I mean, there's like affirmative nihilism and negative nihilism, and so there's like a lot of ways that nothing, quote unquote, plays out. There's like a moral nihilism where you have to build up your moral precepts from like the base up, and you have to justify like why preserving life is good and like weird abstract questions like that you never really considered. Kirk is not that. He has a very strong core belief system that, from my understanding, he hasn't interrogated all that much. So he's clearly not a nihilist. Vikings fans, I think that they question things a lot. I think they have to rebuild their beliefs up from nothing a lot. So I'm going to go with Vikings fans.
Also, for the Norse Code 7... I was going to say the 7 stages of Grief Corner. Please explain the rest of the season. I don't even think you need to go 7 stages. We're it's downhill from here.
I don't think anyone's going through, because like they didn't go through denial. That's for sure.
No. Somebody literally sent us the lyrics to a Creed song called "Why."
Amazing.
So that was a thing.
Amazing.
Somebody said, I hate these rotting sacks of meat that encase my football team. The flesh is weak and must be removed for our ascension to transpire. More of a comment than a question, I guess. This would never have happened on artificial turf. Replace all natural grass playing surfaces with artificial turf now. Mm-hmm. Couldn't they just stitch up Cousins, give him something for the pain, and put him back out there? He's only slightly less mobile with a bad Achilles.
And like 8 ellipses afterwards.
Yeah. Well, he's a statue. So, yeah. Do you think O'Connell's deal with the devil, I say with the occult, do you think that O'Connell's deal with the occult that led to last season's good fortune is what is causing this season's bad fortune? And if so, how do we counteract this magic?
So, again, I don't think that the bargain that O'Connell made has a timeline attached to it in that way. I don't think you borrow from one season to get into the other season. That's a consistent stance I've had. I think it's a different deal with the occult that has manifested this, or just miscast magic. It could just be, that you cast the magic pretty poorly. Could be a monkey's paw situation. We referenced that at the beginning of the episode, but I think it is a little bit different. How do you counteract this magic? Here's the neat thing: you don't.
Nope. You let it ride. That's all you can do at this point.
You'll make it much worse if you try to counteract it.
Speaking of, more of an apology than a question. After week 1, I named my fantasy team Taron Rodgers. Hours before today's game, I traded Adam Thielen for Kirk Cousins. Kirk's injury is clearly karmic retribution for me mocking Rodgers. Can I ever be forgiven? No.
It's your fault, but forgiveness will come easily, I think.
Yeah. Also, question for Reef's medical advice corner. Would listening to the sounds of 2 married hetero-cis dolphins mating to the soothing sounds of Creed help heal Kirk Cousins' Achilles tear?
Who's marrying the dolphins?
These
as
dolphins
in, like,
are
the
married.
priest. Who's officiating? Sorry, I wanted to be clear because the verb marrying means both.
Yes.
Who's officiating that wedding is what I was getting across.
A dolphin that's signed up through the Universal Life Church?
A lot of those. So I appreciate all the qualifiers because those are probably the only marriages that Kirk Cousins would approve of. So here's the thing. I don't think Kirk Cousins would want to listen to 2 married hetero cis humans mating. So that's just porn. I think he's against that. So I don't know that the addition or the change from human to dolphin would make it acceptable to him. I don't think that he's on that train.
Boy, out of context, that's even worse.
Oh no.
Why, God, why do you always have to take our joy away from us, perpetually pulling the rug out from under our hope? Leave us alone. And finally, Case Cookus?
Case Cookus.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what's gone on. It was officially announced today Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles. It's not good. This is at a time that Cousins has been playing very well, and the team is really starting to click on offense, at least as far as the passing game is concerned. What should we move right into number 2? Because I feel like that's kind of the logical step here.
Yeah.
We got a question in, and the question is Cody. He says, for a Reefs and so on corner, what do you think is the best? What do you think is the best path the Vikings could take going forward? Start Jaron Hall for 9 games and see what they have. Start Nick Mullins once he comes off short-term IR, or trade for a vet like a Locke or Brissett and start them. And we haven't done this season, but it is time once again, ladies and gentlemen, for a Reef to debate the only person who is on his level. It is time once again for a Reef debates a Reef. A Reef, what do you think is the best path the Vikings could take going forward, starting Jaron Hall for 9 games and seeing what they have?
I mean, obviously not. That is such a stupid idea. I can't believe that people come up with it. The real answer, of course, is to sign a free agent quarterback, because the whole point of a franchise is that you play year after year after year, which means that you have to preserve the future and win now. That's impossible to do when you're trading away important assets. You can't trade away for another quarterback because quarterbacks are expensive in the trade market. You have to sign a free agent quarterback. Or do we really believe that a 5th-round rookie that the Vikings wouldn't even commit to in 3 separate interviews as being a starter next week is going to, not even just for the season, next week is going to be good enough to win for the rest of the season? They've seen this guy practice. They've seen this guy play. They've seen him play in NFL games. Yeah, he might be better than Kellen Mond, but that doesn't mean he's enough to win games. The point is to win as many games as you can right now while still preserving your capacity to win games in the future. A free agent from that perspective is essentially free. And there's tons of free agents out there on the market, many of whom have clearly contacted the Vikings. There are people who are familiar with the Vikings offense, people like Colt McCoy who've worked with Kevin O'Connell in the past, people like Matt Ryan, who have been successful in Shanahan offenses, specifically people who can run this offense effectively. There's tons of free agent quarterbacks out there that you have the capacity to sign. You create, and it's important to do that because you can't tank, right? You need to create a winning culture for a couple of reasons. First, because that's who Kevin O'Connell is. You cannot create one kind of culture and then countermand that culture going forward. The Vikings have very clearly established a culture where they have to consistently compete. You can't undermine Kevin O'Connell by going around him that way, because once you do that, you can't get that back. Also, it's important because you want to keep important free agents around. People like Justin Jefferson, people like Danielle Hunter. They want to be on teams that are trying to win because guess what? They like to win too, and their contracts are going to be associated with the teams that they're on. So if the teams aren't trying very hard, if you're going to throw, Jaron Hall out there so that Justin Jefferson can't hit his receiving totals, that's going to be bad. Why would he want to re-sign with the Vikings? So if you're trying to build for the future, you don't want to trade away capital. You want to preserve the opportunity that you have to keep your best free agents around. This isn't like the stock market. These are real people, right? You need to make sure that you keep the locker room happy and you want to keep the locker room motivated. It carries over into next year. I mean, take a look at what the Lions have been able to do. They consistently compete. They go 1-10 to begin the Dan Campbell era, and look where they are now just because of the culture that Dan Campbell has created, and they've always attempted to compete. Now, you're also, even if the free agent quarterback that you bring in is not as good as Jaron Hall, always a possibility. You're not obligated to start the guy because you haven't sunk that much capital into him. You have the ability to create a true competition on the roster, and that'll create confidence for whoever wins that competition. And it gives you a backup, regardless of who wins that competition, a backup more capable than Sean Mannion. Right? That's the backup option, right? Because Nick Mullins is not going to come off of IR for a little bit. I think they said week 10. That's crazy. There are quarterbacks out there right now, like Joe Flacco, that have done better than starters in the league right now. And we know that they know how to play football and deliver the ball efficiently and systematically to receivers like Justin Jefferson. So the goal is to win as many games as possible. I think you can still make the playoffs with how well the defense is doing, and build the equity with the rest of the team so that you can build going forward.
I just want to point out that you missed an opportunity to say that there are elite quarterbacks out there like Joe Flacco.
Like Joe Flacco, yeah.
Just wanted to point that out. So
fair enough.
Clearly, you're not thinking about Jaron Hall, but what about starting Nick Mullins once he comes off short-term IR?
No. I mean, look, if Nick Mullins wins a competition against Jaron Hall or against whatever free agent quarterback, all the better, right? You can bring Nick Mullins in. He has played in a Shanahan-style system. He's actually been somewhat efficient. But, we saw what he was able to do in the preseason and in training camp. You can't go into this season with the goal of hoping that a guy coming off of IR in week 10 or week 11 is going to be the savior. If that happens, great. You can't go in thinking that that is going to be the way that you get out of this, right? The goal is to win as many games as possible. You can't do that if you think that the guy on IR, who's not going to be available for a couple more weeks, is going to be the guy that saves your franchise. The games are coming at a premium for the Vikings. But when they were at 0-3, we figured that there were probably 3 or 4 more losses that they could take on the schedule, maybe 5 if you include the Kansas City game, right? There's not that many more losses they can take. So if they sacrifice 2 or 3 of them in the hopes that Nick Mullins is going to allow them to go undefeated for the rest of the season, I mean, that's utopian. That's pie in the sky.
So what about a free agent, or what about trading? There was a rumor today about Jameis Winston, unsubstantiated, but Jameis Winston, or there are other options such as, our man Ben DiNucci.
Yeah, okay, so whoever says they should sign a free agent quarterback is clearly off their rocker. I cannot believe that people think that there are quarterbacks that are available on the market right now that can do better than quarterbacks that have been in systems, right? There's a reason all of those people are out there in free agency instead of on teams. Quarterbacks are the most valuable asset that you can have on a football team. You think that somebody who has the ability to win you games right now is going to be out there unsigned by a team? I mean, even Dalvin Cook got picked up. You think that there are people who roster Taylor Heineke over somebody like Carson Wentz for fun, that they want that because that they like Taylor Heineke more. Maybe they do. I mean, Carson Wentz might be a locker room cancer, another reason not to sign a free agent quarterback, but they think it because Taylor Heineke is more likely to win them games, right? So the goal, again, is to win games. The goal is not to win capital, right? So yeah, you can talk all you want about how signing a free agent quarterback is going to help preserve the culture and preserve the draft capital you need to build a team for the yada, yada, yada. That doesn't matter because you can't inspire a locker room with Colt McCoy, right? You are not showing the locker room that you are committed to winning, that you're establishing that winning culture that you care so much about by signing Joe Flacco. That's crazy, right? These people have not been throwing a football, much less have been engaged in the actual system with the Vikings, with Kevin O'Connell, with players like KJ Osborne, right? They haven't been trying to find ways in the modern NFL, because the game changes every year, haven't been trying to find ways to keep up. And the game changes every year. And these guys get older. There's a reason Joe Flacco and Matt Ryan have been signed. The last years that we've seen Carson Wentz and Joe Flacco and Matt Ryan all play have been awful, right? They've been bad. There's no reason to think that midway through the season they could show up and play. No, the goal is importantly to find ways to maximize your opportunity to get into the playoffs. And the way to do that is to sign a quarterback or to grab a quarterback that teams already think are good. So you could get a Jacoby Brissett. He did pretty well with the Browns last year. He's on the Washington Commanders right now. They seem pretty confident in Sam Howell for some reason. Let them be, right? You could trade for somebody like a Ben DiNucci. We all know that he is an elite quarterback that you could bring into the building. They would immediately begin to win more games. The thing is, you can't trust that your fifth-round rookie quarterback is going to be better than a guy that has started actual games in the league for teams that wanted to start that guy, right? So we like Jameis Winston, for example. Everyone's like worried about all the picks he throws, and yeah, that's a concern. But we know statistically that his downfield passing style produces more wins than it loses, even though turnovers are king. You know why? Because deep shots matter, right? Jameis Winston knows that you got to throw the ball deep and you got to win games by being explosive, because his interceptions, they're also pretty far downfield, right? They're basically punts. It's fine. It's not as good as Kirk Cousins, but it's a lot better than most backups in the league, including the rookie backup that, again, Jaren Hall was supposed to be the third quarterback on the depth chart. Now suddenly he's good enough to start? Absolutely not. You need to find a guy that teams trust to win. And the guy that teams trust to win is already on a team, because quarterbacks are important. There's no reason that a free agent quarterback is going to be available and help you win games. You're not going to inspire a locker room that way. You're not going to find a backup that's capable that way, because if they were willing to be a backup and if they were good at being a backup, they'd already be a backup, because it's way better to make $4 million now than nothing. That's crazy that you think you can sign a free agent quarterback.
Need to smoke after that?
I've got a third side. We got to defend Jaren Hall.
So let's talk about why Jaren Hall deserves this shot.
I mean, come on, what's the point of drafting a quarterback if you're not going to give that guy a chance? Every quarterback is a shot in the dark, right? But if a team is willing to give away a quarterback, how good do you think he is? Yeah, okay. So we're going to make the argument that there's a reason that a guy is out there in free agency and say that that's a reason that that guy is bad, yet we're going to ignore the fact that there's a reason that a guy is going to be out there on the trade market. What we think Drew Lock is going to be baited out there just because we think that he's good? Absolutely not. No one thinks that these quarterbacks are good if they're willing to give them away, because every team is in the situation that the Vikings were 4 days ago, right? Where they had a healthy quarterback and they could be in the opposite situation in an instant, right? Every team knows that. Kirk Cousins hadn't missed a game due to an on-field injury for years. He was in Iron Man until he wasn't. Peyton Manning, Iron Man until he wasn't. Tom Brady, Iron Man until he wasn't. Every one of these teams has a quarterback where they're like, man, I feel positive. I feel good about this guy, but we cannot lose him. There's no way that a team would say, hey, we saw what happened to your franchise quarterback that hasn't missed a game in like 7 years or whatever, and we think that we're better than that. We think that we can avoid injury. No, the only reason that they're giving those quarterbacks away is because they're not confident in them, because they don't think that they can win games with those quarterbacks. Because all of these teams right now, they're trying to win games right now, right? Like Jameis Winston in the NFC South, it's the NFC South. Of course, it's wide open, right? No one thinks that like the Carolina Panthers are absolutely going to dominate the rest of the season and edge the Saints out. The Saints know that they have an opportunity to win the division. They can't do that unless they're confident in their backup quarterback options, right? So you take, like, there's no way, for example, that, you know, the Saints, that the Panthers, after seeing everything that Bryce Young has done, are willing to give up on Andy Dalton. And if they are, that should probably tell you something, right? So you need to trust that your evaluators know what they're doing. The reason the Vikings did not, after Nick Mullins went down, acquire another quarterback to be quarterback 2 is because they appreciated what Jaren Hall did in his move up to quarterback 2, right? This is not a Kellen Mond situation where you went through multiple injuries before Kellen Mond saw the field. That's not what happened. The Vikings had weeks and weeks and weeks to see how Jaren Hall would respond to the situation, and they appreciated what he did. You know why that they didn't name him a starter? Is because they want him to prove it, and that's great. They should absolutely do that. But the whole reason that you bring guys into your building, the whole reason that guys trust you when they try to re-sign with the team or try to figure out where they go, is because you put your faith in them. Jaren Hall has more arm strength and more mobility than Kirk Cousins has. And you can design an offense around what he does well in order to maximize what the Vikings can do. Because, hey, you do want to win games now. Jaren Hall is your best chance at winning games. But not only that, you finally get a chance to see. Because if the Packers had had a chance to see how good Jordan Love was before this season, man, would they have changed their tune. The Vikings have a unique opportunity now to see whether or not the rookie quarterback they have on their roster is going to develop into anything meaningful. And if he's not, that sucks. You gave him a chance. People will understand. And now you know. Now you know whether or not you need to invest in a quarterback. Now you know whether or not you can put all of your eggs in the Jaren Hall basket. But you're not going to know until he plays actual games. So put him out there. He's going to do the most that you can to win games right now, but he's also going to do more to invest in the future of the franchise, because what is the point of having draft capital or cap space if you're not going to use it on players that are going to help you win games? The Vikings already invested draft capital in Jaren Hall. If the Vikings trade away draft capital to get a guy and then never use that guy, that's as bad as drafting a guy and never using that guy, right? You wouldn't want that if they traded for a guy, so why would you be okay with that when they picked a guy? Jaren Hall has done nothing but impress since he's joined the team. He's much better than a fifth-round pick typically is, and let's not ignore the fact that there are fifth-round picks starting in the NFL right now. I mean, what is Sam Howell doing? He's a fifth-round pick, right? You know, we need to acknowledge Dak Prescott, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC, fourth-round pick. We need to acknowledge that we can't just slap a label on a guy and figure, yeah, he was drafted in the fifth round. He can't do anything. That's crazy. We know that the Vikings have upside with this guy, and he's the only guy that has any chemistry or knowledge of the playbook. He has chemistry with the team and knowledge of the playbook. You bring a guy in, you're only going to have him, you're going to have to sit him for like 1 or 2 weeks while he learns the playbook. I mean, Sam Bradford, when he was brought in, had to sit a week, even though he came in 2 weeks before the season started. And you take a look at other quarterbacks that were traded midseason, people like Carson Palmer, they were disasters when they showed up right away. In fact, Carson Palmer was a disaster for the rest of that season for the Oakland Raiders. And so he had to go to the Arizona Cardinals and sit a full offseason with them. It's tough to be a quarterback coming in midway through the season. We all remember Josh Freeman. You need to get a guy who knows the system and knows the playbook. And fortunately for the Vikings, they have a guy talented enough to perform the offense and who knows the playbook, and that's Jaren Hall.
Now you can exhale. You can have a deep breath. I imagine you seeing stars around like halfway through that.
My mouth hurts so much.
I was, you might actually have to like just polish that tooth down. Just polish it down as much as you can to avoid this. It's only causing you pain. So
so is that car, and I tried to keep it.
Well, the car was kept against your will, really. You were trying to get rid of that as best as you could, and then someone obliged you. Put it in the garage next time. So Kirk Cousins is done. Kirk Cousins has had a very good year this year. For the most part, has thrown, especially the last 2 weeks, Jordan Addison was doing very well. Jordan Addison is starting to break like rookie records that were broken the year that Justin Jefferson was the rookie. This is good. This has been a good year. And now the most stable quarterback in possibly the entirety of the NFC is not going to be playing for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, Jordan Addison has been having just a remarkable season. um, yeah, like 123 yards against San Francisco, 82 yards against Green Bay. Had a couple of 50 plus yard games. I think he's had 4 other 50 plus yard games. So he's been not only good, but he's been fairly consistent, especially as a rookie receiver. It's tough to find those guys. The fact that he did most of them while he was wide receiver two, also part of being impressive. But the fact that since he's been wide receiver one, he has, generally speaking, performed. He's done what the Vikings needed him to do. He's adding, I think, to his overall tool set. He's still, some of the concerns that we have about his size and physicality, those are definitely showing through. There's no question about that. But I mean, I think that we saw that, in the interception that was wrestled away from him, right, against San Francisco. And we saw that a little bit actually in the red zone in Green Bay, just a tiny bit, not as big a deal there. But for the most part, I mean, he's doing really excellent stuff that I think, if it weren't for Puka Nacua, who's like last week has not been great, you could say that Addison is potential dark horse-ish for offensive rookie of the year, despite being a second receiver. So it's been good. His speed has really shown up, which is, I think, one of the biggest assets that the Vikings drafted him for. And it's allowed the Vikings to force defenses to alter their coverage, or will allow the Vikings to force defenses to alter their coverage to account for his speed in a way that like Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne could not. So obviously, without Cousins, it's a different conversation, but maybe he could be very helpful to a quarterback that might need a more simplified offense that comes in, whether that is somebody like a Jaron Hall or is somebody that just is not going to have the full range of offense available to them because they haven't learned all the playbook yet because they're a free agent or a traded asset. So having somebody who can just run a deep route pretty well, big asset.
Yeah, incredibly. So, what would be better is if an inexperienced quarterback comes in and there was already a pre-established run game, which there really isn't at this point. I wonder how this affects the rest of the season, not even like playoff wise, but like I admit I don't have much hope for the season after this. This is rough. And right at a time that like this is everyone should have been walking into work today super excited about the Vikings just annihilating the Packers, putting them in their place, handling a bad team like they were supposed to do all those other bad teams ago, not playing down to them, laughing at Jordan Love's bombs that he was throwing every other pass. Justice was right. But yeah, this is tough. This is reminiscent of the Culpepper injury at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's this sucks. Well, before we move on to the review of the Packers game quickly, any sense as to what you believe the team is going to do? They're on Monday Night Football, they announced that, announced is the wrong word. Schefter's feeling on the matter is that the Vikings are not going to bring anyone new in.
Yeah, and Kevin O'Connell earlier today mentioned that, his phone blew up with a bunch of texts, which would indicate that, either players who are free agents or teams have made quarterbacks available to them or something like that. So they've got options, but my read, which is not, very good, I'm no longer in the building every day or anything like that, but my read based off of everyone's reporting is that the Vikings have called around, but that they'll probably stick with the quarterbacks that they have on the roster. But again, I'm not crazy confident in that assessment. We will know in a little bit as the trade deadline will pass a couple hours after a lot of people will listen to this. They'll still be able to sign a free agent after that, of course, but trading for a quarterback, it's going to come relatively soon, and it could obviate the whole episode, which would be kind of funny.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's post something and have it be completely irrelevant. This is hardly the first time it's happened in 490
by no
episodes.
means, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, let's review the game as best as we can, and leave the cousin stuff to the end. But the Vikings went in and dominated. This was a game that was at no point really in contention. This was not a competitive game by Green Bay. It turns out Justice might actually know what he's talking about, or at least about this team. Because
this time, right?
this,
I mean, you know,
this team,
blind
this
squirrel.
time. Yeah, blind squirrel, exactly. Found his nut. This is a team that the wide receivers didn't appear to know where they were going. This is a team that just liked to chuck it deep. It looked very much like, and maybe this is just bias because you heard Justice Mosqueda say it, it looked like they were trying to make Jordan Love play as Aaron Rodgers and fail miserably.
Yeah, but with none of the discipline Rodgers seems to impose on receivers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Jordan Love had like 7 deep throws, and I want to say 2 of them were accurate. Like it's. I mean, there was like a drop maybe here or there, but like it was a bad showing for him because that's clearly what he wanted to do. The team wasn't on the same page with him a lot of the time. I mean, there's this clip going around. I think Luke Braun tweeted it out, but Justice also tweeted live that like on an RPO, none of the receivers realized that they could be or should be a receiving option, and they all tried to block, which meant that there were no routes being run, which meant that Jordan Love had no one to throw to, still tried to throw the ball, and because it was an RPO, there was an ineligible man downfield. And the reason that's important, right, that it's an RPO, is because on RPOs, it's a run-pass option, right? And so at the snap, the quarterback makes a decision at the mesh point, essentially, about whether or not he's going to give the ball to the running back and let the running back run or throw the ball, right? So that's all pretty clear. That's what an RPO is. So he's like reading a linebacker. And if the linebacker moves downhill or stays flat, they give the they take the ball out and throw it. And if the linebacker attempts to play pass coverage, they give it to the running back, right? So cool, that's fine. The problem is the offensive line doesn't know that by design. The offensive line blocks as if they are run blocking, which means that if you pull the ball at an RPO, you have to get rid of it right away. Either to throw to a receiver, which is the ideal option, or throw the ball away. Because if you don't do that, this is exactly what happens. It's very strict in terms of timing because otherwise you're just going to have a guy, downfield, which is one reason why RPOs, it's a little bit more difficult to introduce them into the NFL than in college, because in college you can be 3 yards downfield, but in the NFL you can only be 1 yard downfield. So that's one element for why, Love clearly doesn't seem to have a full command of the things that are required of him, because that's just something a quarterback should know, that they should just get rid of the ball. But also the receivers clearly didn't know that they were running a route, which is crazy. Like that's like truly nuts that the receivers didn't know that they could, and it was obviously an RPO, because if it was just a running play that Jordan Love accidentally thought was an RPO, not outside the realm of possibility, but if it was, the running back wouldn't have let go of the ball and it would have been a fumble as Jordan Love fought for it. So it was very obviously an RPO, and the receivers just didn't react. I assume that there was probably only one receiver designated to run a route, and it was one receiver's fault, not 3. But on film, you see 3 receivers blocking. So that's a rough situation. And that kind of and that was like maybe the worst of it, but it encapsulated a lot of the problems that the Packers had throughout the game. The receivers were not on the same page with Jordan Love, and that's like not a thing that occurs in an Aaron Rodgers offense, because you don't see the field if there is a bare shadow of a possibility that you're not on the same page as him. But Love doesn't have that kind of command. And so they're constantly negotiating the things that they need to do on particular plays when they see particular looks. And maybe they should have less complicated offenses. Maybe they should have fewer routes where receivers have to make a decision on whether or not they're going to run this route or this route based off of the coverage and leverage. It's going to give you fewer options, but you're also less likely to not be on the same page as the quarterback. And we saw that throughout the game. The thing is, what's interesting is that Love was more confused on plays where the Vikings did not blitz. And in fact, the Vikings seemingly knew that, and they blitzed less in this game than they have in any other game this season, which is still a lot. They blitzed on 40% of their passing downs, which, like as like a reminder, last year that would have led the league in blitzing, right? Like a 40% blitz rate is one of the highest blitz rate over the course of a season that you can have. And that was like a remarkably low blitz rate for the Vikings this week. So that's just, keep that in mind. But they did blitz a lot less, and a lot of Love's worst throws came when there were only 3 or 4 pass rushers, because they were able to confuse him with coverage and changing what those looks are. So, I mean, a lot of this is defensively. A lot of this is, the Vikings playing pretty well, and we saw some really great stuff, specifically from like DJ Wanham and Harrison Phillips, two people that I've either had a history of criticizing with DJ Wanham, or have been a little bit less impressed with this year with like Harrison Phillips. They had great games, just really fantastic games. Danielle Hunter played pretty well. All of that, I don't want to take that away, but I think a lot of the Packers underperformance was just like the Packers just like don't like have an offense. The offensive line is not playing very well, despite the reputation the Packers have built. And mostly as run blockers, they aren't playing very well. As pass protectors, it's kind of hit or miss, depends on the player. But in pass protection metrics, it's kind of the same situation with the Vikings, where it's like, oh, in a lot of pass protection metrics, you're doing really well. But the results aren't there from a pass protection standpoint. For the Vikings, there's like, I think, a lot of reasons. For the Packers, I think a lot of it is Jordan Love, right? That he just holds on to the ball a lot. But yeah, I mean, really, really great games from some individual members of the defense. Josh Metellus, again, had an outstanding game. He's a really great find for the Vikings. And I'm glad they just decided, screw it. We're just going to have 3 safeties in the field because all these guys are good. I'm glad they found a way to make that work. But yeah, I think a lot of it was just that the offense for the Packers just like it's not ready to be an offense for probably a couple of reasons.
I watched Jordan Love drop back for a bit of play action, and he was trying to hand the ball on the wrong side. He was trying to hand off to the running back who was on the other side of him. I've only seen that in college. It was
I did see that in the NFL earlier. I'm trying to remember who. But yeah, it's pretty rare. I think Bryce Young did it. That was it.
You don't see that often. I just sat there and I had to rewind it to make sure that I was seeing that exact, like, that was remarkable. It was whatever is going on there as far as offensive coordinator, as far as play calling, as far as, just making it to the facilities. I'm not sure they know what they're doing down there now that Aaron Rodgers isn't around to bail them out. And watching, I think
of all, so that image of a quarterback handing the ball off and then running back on the other side. So I'm going through like my memory of that kind of image, and I have seen it in the NFL, but it has never been for a quarterback who is having a good year. It's always been like a Zach Wilson, or I think Sam Darnold actually did it, but it's always like somebody who's just like, just having the worst time of his life. You're doing him a disservice every time you send him out there kind of year.
So it's funny because over the weekend I had listened to Marshawn Lynch talk about his playing days in college with Aaron Rodgers. And he had said that his first like real play with Aaron Rodgers, he lined up in the wrong spot. And Aaron Rodgers figured out, like, once he snapped the ball, that he was on and like did some weird flowing like maneuver and got it over to him. But like, that's it. That's all you got. And Jordan Love, it turns out, is not Aaron Rodgers in so many ways. Man, they love to throw the deep ball, don't they?
So many times. And like the receivers aren't even like open a lot of these times. It's like, why? What do you do? Who? For what? For
prestige?
People care about you.
People care about you, Jordan Love. As he's yanked back from the underworld. White hair. Oh.
Wrinkles under his eyes.
Breaks his magic wand. Yeah, the Vikings offense did well. Jordan Addison played very well. The line held up pretty well. The TJ Hawkinson, again, catching passes, doing
Catching
important
passes?
things.
You always need him to catching passes?
KJ Osborne, useful today. Well, useful during game day. KJ Osborne, who, of all people to refer to as Mr. Consistent, and to do so repeatedly during a broadcast.
That was funny.
My son was like, "Why are you screaming at the TV?" Like, I'm yelling at the announcer. I am yelling specifically at Jonathan Vilma for lying to this national audience about how good KJ Osborne is.
So they called him Mr. Consistent, and then they also said in the same broadcast when TJ Hawkinson dropped a wide open pass, you don't see that often from him. And it's just like, yeah, come on. Yeah, you do. He's already had 5 drops this year.
Yeah, don't do this. I'm willing to listen to you tell me that Kirk Cousins is not tough. Like, fine. If that's what you're going to do, Jonathan Vilma, fine. But don't tell me that Mr. Consistent right. on the Vikings is KJ Osborne. What team? Who the hell do you think you are?
I think it's just like for I think a lot of announcers, I think they just like resort to that when it's a guy that the team clearly likes, but is also like not the top guy at his position, right? Like, I think if they had the opportunity, they would have called Johnny Munt Mr. Consistent. Like, I think it's just like
I would have loved that.
That would have been great. I think it's just reserved for players that they just like kind of don't know much about, but they know the team likes them. I think that's it. I think that's all it is.
Yeah, CJ Ham's out there. There's Mr. Consistent right there. That actually would have worked. That would have been fine. KJ Osborne is not Mr. Consistent, but he was hauling in catches. It was quite frankly amazing to watch.
It reminded me of 2 years ago, because last year we didn't get to see a lot of KJ Osborne do his best, but he was really clutch a lot of times 2 years ago, and it was nice to see him do that, especially on third down. That's what the Vikings need out of him. They need him to be maybe not consistent, but reliable in critical situations, in high leverage situations, like on third down, and that's what he did in this game. And I think that his role in the NFL is like kind of best described as being kind of that guy that you go to in those situations. Kind of like, he's wearing the same jersey number, right, as Jarius Wright. Kind of like Jarius Wright.
He was useful. It was good to see. The run game, it was
certainly they ran the ball.
They did run the ball.
Yeah, good for them.
Not great.
Yeah, officially, I think 30 runs, but I think like one of them is like a scramble from
first
Cousins, so.
Touchdown of the year on the run. Worth pointing out. I had said that the first guy who does it needs an extension. So Cam Akers, come on down.
Cam Akers, come on down. Yeah.
3 years, $30 million. Let's make this happen. Good Lord. They finally get off the schneid. They finally get a rushing touchdown. So we can stop seeing that they have 0 for the year. Remarkable.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember the Kansas City Chiefs statistic, right? A couple years ago, it was like they didn't have a wide receiver touchdown.
Yes. That was the one that was just haunting them for the season.
Yeah. And people kept talking about it. And they didn't get one for the entire season. Then I think in the first game the next season they got one. So
yeah, immediately.
So I'm glad the Vikings managed it. I don't know. It's not like Cam Akers had a good game, right? But
he sat on the sidelines for a good chunk of it.
Yeah, that's true. He only had like 9 attempts, while Alexander Mattison had 16. Which it's a choice that you could make if you want.
I thought that Vilma being upset that Akers wasn't getting a shot, and then but Madison's a good running back too. It's like,
yeah, he's Mr. Consistent.
He's Mr. Consistent. It turns out the entire team. Why not make the entire team out of Mr. Consistence? It's kind of where we were at with that. And I would be remiss to forget to mention rather. Greg Joseph is missing again. Well, he's missing kicks.
He's missing.
He's at the practice facility daily, but he's missing
findable.
Kicks. Yes.
Yeah.
His wife has not left him again.
Again.
This is
yeah.
But every time he misses an extra point, an Angel gets his wings, and the Vikings wins. So
great. So yeah, 2 kicks missed from the 40 plus, I guess 40 to 49 yard range, but he did make every extra point. So from a Hell League perspective, pretty reasonable.
The North
1 for 3 on field goals, 3 for 3 at extra points. That's good.
Yeah, the Norse Code Hell League, ladies and gentlemen. Find your level today.
But yeah, we're back at Vikings kicker. Purgatory. It's not really hell, right? It's more purgatory. But
it's the level of hell where you just have like a single rock in your shoe. And, like, it's large enough to be annoying. You cannot, like, push it to the side. You will eventually have to take it off, but then you discover that it came into, like, a hole in your sock.
Yeah. And you can't find a way to get rid of it. Yeah. So that makes him 10 for 14 on the year. Unlike a lot of kickers that are in the 70% range, like he is, they're not composed entirely of 50 plus yard kick or misses. So he's got a couple of misses in the 40 plus range, like you mentioned, and a lot of misses in the 50 plus yard range. So when you adjust his kicks for distance and accuracy at those distances, he is about the 30th out of like 32 kickers, about the 30th in accuracy when you adjust for kick distance. Which is a fact about him.
Yep. Greg Joseph.
He also has the worst extra point accuracy. So
it's a thing of beauty, quite frankly. All right. The Vikings move on without Kirk Cousins. I believe Atlanta is the next game. That'll be interesting. Atlanta also lost a player for the rest of the year, so we'll see how that goes. Let's head to the mailbag. It's kind of an unconventional recap and an unconventional episode because this is a pretty major thing, and it's obviously the injury is going to dominate every storyline for the rest of the year. It turns into
I just want to point out that Kirk Cousins was playing outstanding football, truly magnificent football for like the last, I don't know, 8 quarters or so of football. Like the thing is, like, Kirk Cousins in rhythm, in timing, tends to be fairly accurate when there is an open receiver available to him, and that's great. When he is forced to improvise, he is like not that good. But in this game, he was throwing off platform. He was making blind throws. He was changing his arm slot, which he just like doesn't do. He went off of the typical progression to find an open guy that's a little bit more valuable a receiver because it's further downfield or in the end zone, like on that Jordan Addison play. Like he kind of threw that into triple coverage, and it hit Addison in the hands in the end zone. Addison didn't win; it was a contested catch loss, but like that we don't see that, and whenever he went off script, it was the right decision. You don't see that. This was like one of the best. Like last week was one of the best games I've ever seen from Kirk Cousins. This week was also one of the best games I've ever seen from Kirk Cousins. His game against Philadelphia was like outstanding. His game against Chicago was very good. Like he did not have that many bad games. Like he didn't have that many bad throws. Like screw games. He didn't have that many bad throws all year. And in this game, he was insane. And then this happens. It's just like I can't. He finally does the thing where he combines like his best parts of his play in 2020 and his best parts of his play in 2022 and combines them into a quarterback that can actually do everything in all situations, that's the thing that he couldn't do. I just wanted to like put that on the record, even though everyone had already been talking about it like that. That's just like, that's part of the game recap. And now, crap.
Yeah. Now, the person who never got injured, and we get to deal with the fallout of this. And let's go into let's go to a Hyundai for one of us is a Hyundai for all of us.
Jesus.
What are the chances the Vikings still have the second best quarterback in the division after this injury?
I hate that I have to think about this. Holy crap.
I mean,
okay.
You have Jordan Love.
So, well, first of all, the Vikings had the best quarterback in the division, but yeah. So first of all, we have to figure out if Tyson Bagent's any good, and that's kind of tough, actually. Like he might be kind of good. And like, not in a sense where you could compare him to Cousins or even Goff, but like Jaren Hall, right? Like if Nick Mullins is out there in a couple of weeks, like I don't know. Tyson Bagent's kind of good. Not like, in above average starter good, but like, holy crap, here's a rookie undrafted free agent. He's kind of doing stuff better than Justin Fields is. It must be noted, right? So there's that. You also do have Jordan Love, who exists. We just talked about how it doesn't seem like he plays professional football. It seems like he plays college football at a professional level, which is not a good thing.
But he's getting paid, which I feel like should violate something.
It feels wrong, yeah. Man. The chances are definitely not zero, which is crazy. Let's say it's like a 1 in 5 chance, right? Like, depending on whether that's like a trade or a free agent, which like it'd be very funny if they like sign Matt Ryan and he was immediately better than Jordan Love. That'd be very funny. But it's still like it's not greater than 50%. It's pretty low odds, but it's substantial. I'm going to go with 1 in 5.
Before we move on, what was with the calling pass plays for Jaren Hall to like start? Vikings are up 14-0. Why are they not running the clock?
Running the ball?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a combination of a couple. So I think like because they would run the ball on first down. It was like second down where you were like, what are you doing, man?
Throwing to the outside. Like it didn't end up stopping I'm just saying, like, why are you like actively trying to stop the clock here?
So I think there's a couple of things. One, the running game was garbage, right? So I think that's part of it, right? That they only had like one run of over 10 yards. And that probably wasn't happening again, especially in a situation where they expect you to run it. Two, you drain more clock by getting first downs than you do by running between the downs. So that might be what they were thinking. But again, I don't know that you're more reliably converting first downs with Jaren Hall. But that's the one where like the announcers were like critiquing the Vikings. And I was like, yeah, you might have a point. Most of the game you've been wrong, but you might be onto something here. So I don't know. I kind of agree that maybe they should have run the ball in those second downs a little bit more often, but the second Jaren Hall drive, they did convert a new set of downs by passing, so it wasn't entirely lost. But yeah, they probably should have run it.
It just seemed very odd. Like, A, this is how you're breaking in the new quarterback, and B, you realize they can still come back, right? It felt odd.
Yeah.
Alex asks, what is a reasonable amount of sadness to feel for Kirk tearing his Achilles and the season going off the rails? It's very hard to gauge how normal fans of normal teams react to bad news.
I mean, the Vikings like found a way to make sure that you would feel sad, right? By having a season where Kirk Cousins was playing out of his mind before it happened. Like it couldn't just be like 20 22, or I guess that one would have been pretty sad. It could have just been like 2021 where like the season was off the rails or something, and then Cousins gets hurt and you're like, all right, fine, whatever. It was like, oh my God, they just turned around an 0-3 season and now they're in the thick of it. That's crazy. And Cousins is playing lights out. Oh my God. And the offense is doing well without Justin Jefferson. He's about to come back. Holy crap. And the defense is turned around. Jesus. They just beat San Francisco. That's a good team, allegedly. Oh my God. Right? Like, they had to do a lot to get you to buy back into Cousins. They had a whole PR campaign this summer with Netflix. Like, it's tough, because if it happened 2 years ago, you would have just been like, oh, that sucks, man. Well, best of luck. And then you're just like, man, what could have been?
Yeah.
Right? So, it's hard to gauge what's reasonable in this situation. But I think you probably should err on the side of sadness, because, at the end of the day, like, yeah, I don't agree with Cousins on a lot of stuff, but he's like a person. This sucks. I would hate, for this to happen to anybody I know. So, like, err on the side of sadness. I think that's fair.
It would have been fun to see a playoff run, especially like one last playoff run for him before he inevitably ends up playing for,
like the Cardinals or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go with that. British Rob asks, once Cousins left the game, Jonathan Vilma was questioning the offensive play calling by Kevin O'Connell. Given how Vilma must obviously be smarter than our Kevin O'Connell, how long before Vilma gets a phone call from Jim Irsay to replace Sheldon Steichen and Gindy?
That's good. Probably not this year.
Shame.
I think Irsay's going to give Steichen a pass for Gardner Minshew. But next year. Yeah, I think next year.
It seems like the right course of action on that. Numerophile asks, assuming no risk of further injury, how much worse of a quarterback, percentage-wise, would Kirk Cousins in a cleated walking boot be than Sean Mannion on this team?
So if it was his left Achilles, because that's where you drive your power from on a throw if you're right-handed. That would probably be a lot worse, but this is his right Achilles. And, that's not nothing. It's pretty important. I would say you probably still have terrible accuracy in that situation, because you can't use it. Your ankle won't like go up and down with power, right? Like, that's the whole point of that thing. So I would think you probably still want Sean Mannion out there, assuming a world where you don't have to worry about re-injury or pain and just worrying about like throwing effectiveness or whatever. You probably still want Sean Mannion out there.
Yeah. Next question is from Don from Ohio, who asks, are all things now possible for the Vikings through Ben DiNucci? Which is also to say, Norm asks, which Broncos or former Broncos quarterback do you prefer as Vikings QB1, Seattle Dragons legend Ben DiNucci, or Seahawks legend and should-be starter Drew Lock?
Should be starter. There's like a huge Drew Lock, and I'm not just talking about Lock to Mini. There's like a huge Drew Lock, like, relatively speaking, truth or movement. I don't really get it. He's bad. Obviously, Ben DiNucci. You just got to get that sidearm magic,
It's the only way this season turns around is with a sidearm like his. Boy, Denver Ludvigson asks, how good does Jaron Hall have to play for us to not consider a quarterback in the draft next year?
If he finishes the season as like starting quality, and by that I mean like top 23-ish, top 25-ish maybe, probably. That's kind of the direction Houston went with Davis Mills before they were like, actually, no. I think that's kind of where you end up for a lot of teams, where they're just like, yeah, if he continues developing at this pace, there's something here. I think if he finishes as like a guy that you could confidently rank like in the top 23-ish or something like that. Of course, anything better than that would be fantastic. But yeah, I think that's like when the Washington Commanders kind of stalled on Taylor Heineke, that's kind of where he was. So yeah, I think that's probably, when you rank quarterbacks at the end of the year, you're like, okay, yeah, he's like a starter. Yeah. I think that's where you have to be.
John Mainland, who is also the one who was responsible for the Nessie doll,
Thank you.
Sends a message. Giving second and third QBs reps and even moving guys into and up from the practice squad means a team can really look at different players compared to only the season and preseason stuff. Up to only the closed season here. I think he's referring to like a training camp and all that. Is there an advantage to doing this and extensive draft analysis of quarterbacks now that the small p for politics would make things more difficult with an incumbent fit and starting? Second, how much or how amusing would Carson Wentz in purple be for you, James? For me, I don't care. I would laugh maniacally because I happen to host a podcast with a Carson Wentz hater. So that would be
Carson Wentz hater. Let's not get it
the. By the way, I saw like the QB chart for Russell Wilson this last game. Center and left, nothing to the right. Something to consider. Curious. Now. But also say hi to North Code Nessie for me. So basically the idea of putting in second and third QBs, I suppose now, to kind of find out what you have.
So the problem is the problem is that like you don't have practice time with the second and third quarterbacks. And so this question is basically asking like, what if you gave them reps with the rest of the first team and, kind of move them in and out? And you just get so much more advantage of every additional rep with your first quarterback with the first team that it really, like if you can drill down exactly how you want your receiver to catch a ball on a particular play, and then you have confidence to call that play in the fourth quarter of a regular season game because you spent the final couple of reps in practice doing that. That is kind of the advantage. Those are the types of advantages that you're driving towards when you give your starter all of the reps with the first team. If you were to mix in your second quarterback, and teams have done this, right? Like Taysom Hill, right, is a perfect example of this, right? You lose a lot of value because there's just not enough practice time during the week for you to be able to install everything you want to install with the continued growth that's expected of your offense, because the defenses that you're going up against are also growing and developing. The quarterbacks that you'll be competing alongside are also growing and developing with their first team. And losing even just a couple of reps every week can be, part of that marginal difference that, a receiver is running a route at the wrong depth. That, if you had a couple of extra reps, maybe that play, they would have run the routes at the right depth, or a similar play, they would have run the route at the right depth or something like that. And so the small changes in the way that those practices play out are probably not worth the likelihood that your second best quarterback, who is probably like the 40th best quarterback in the league if you're lucky, is going to be able to make a difference because they had a couple of plays in there. That said, I mean, we see it a couple of times, but like Taysom Hill is like a unique talent in a lot of ways, whereas I don't know that somebody like a Jaron Hall or a Nick Mullins really is. And it would have to be like a pretty significant stylistic change and some other advantage that you're gaining on top of that would allow you to lose those reps. So I don't know that would be worth it, especially because I think you do get a lot of knowledge from in practice reps or in season practices is what I meant to say about the quarterbacks that you're considering, because it's that same process that gave the Packers confidence to stick with Jordan Love. They were probably wrong. Gave the Washington Commanders confidence to stick with Sam Howell. I'm not actually going to say they're wrong yet, but they're probably wrong. But also gave a bunch of other teams, the confidence that they had to stick with their plans, even though, like Patrick Mahomes is a great example, to stick with the guys that they have, even though he didn't start all year. So, I get it, but I do think that you do get some level of knowledge from it, regardless.
Next question is from, should I say Quam Ekstrom, or should it just QAM Ekstrom?
I think you just got to say QAM Ekstrom.
QAM Ekstrom. Schrodinger's cat corner. There's a correlation between positive vibes about the team and horrible luck. As sentiment increases, the likelihood of something terrible happening increases exponentially. If the Vikings played an entire season in a sealed box, would they win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, if the Vikings could not be perceived, but they gathered wins, yeah, I think they could. Yeah, but it would require a lack of observation.
Just don't look, fellas.
Just
Just
don't look.
don't look.
It's like the Invisible Man in Mystery Men.
Yeah. Bridge over Teddy Water asks, for a Reeves surveillance state corner, at today's presser, Kevin O'Connell said that we, quote, wouldn't believe some of the things I've received on my cell phone in the past 24 hours, end quote. Setting aside boring text messages about various quarterback availabilities, what other things did he receive? Messages from past lovers, an invite
100%.
to next summer's boat party on Lake Minnetonka?
We would believe that. Like that does not exist in the universe of things we wouldn't believe.
Someone trying to reach out about his like car warranty?
We would believe that. Messages from past lovers, 100%. Messages from quarterbacks that we wouldn't even consider are on the market would be like, who's the craziest quarterback that would text? They'd be like, oh, yeah, I didn't really think about that guy, because people have already floated Tom Brady, right?
Cam Newton.
Oh, perfect. I think that wins, because I was like, I can't put Peyton there. It's so obviously he's done, so you can't. And it's not like you can be like, yeah, John Elway texted him, hey, like that's not happening, right? Cam Newton, that one's perfect. Oh my gosh.
That would be
you killed it.
That would be the text you. I'm sorry, who?
Yeah, that's nuts. Other than that, other texts that he's received that would fit in the realm of surprising, that would also allow us to not lose our iTunes rating. Evidence that could lead to the arrest of Joe Biden.
Also, supportive messages from Mike Zimmer.
Look, I've been there.
Been there with this. Been there with this, dude. You're stuck. That's all you got.
Well, there's two kinds of messages you get from Mike Zimmer. One, I've been there, Teddy Bridgewater. It ripped my heart out. That sucks. Or the second message, look, let's not pretend I didn't want to do that to Kirk Cousins, but you didn't need to go that far. Those are the two messages he would send.
Yes. Leon asks, outside of simplifying the playbook, what are the best ways Kevin O'Connell can set up Hull to succeed, or at least manage games, with a defense starting to catch fire?
I think so. Obviously, yeah, like simplifying the playbook and keeping it smaller and simpler. But I think that on top of that, right, it would be simplifying his looks and simplifying his job. So that would mean more play action, a lot of rollout where you only need to make half field reads, plays where there's a very clear if then, maybe moving to an RPO style offense, obviously with the timing constraints I mentioned earlier, that would make it like, hey, if this linebacker moves up to stop the run, that means the slant is open to the slant, right? That kind of stuff. So there's that. But also I think that like fitting things into the stuff that he's kind of used to. So that would mean, maybe at BYU, he didn't play with a ton of tight ends. So maybe being a little bit more judicious, putting receivers on the field and splitting them out, because you see that a lot more often where they're spread out. And that's just a world he's a little bit more comfortable in, the types of reads he's comfortable making, right? So that's something that you might consider as well. But yeah, I don't know that, like, if the running game was good, obviously you'd want to lean on that, but it's not, so don't. But yeah, the Vikings already have a pretty good offensive line, so you do have a lot more of an offense available to you than you do with most rookies that are unfamiliar with the offense that they're operating in, because when it's an unfamiliar play or a play they don't have a lot of reps on, having more time in the pocket helps. And the Vikings seemingly will be able to give Hall that. So, yeah, I think that's probably the direction I would go in. Get him on the move, simplify his reads, make the playbook smaller, like you said, and create clearly defined reads in ways that operate with his skill set.
Also from Leon, for Reeves' beloved anime corner, as a newly canonical weeb, this should be an easy question to answer. For those who are not a part...
Before we get to the rest of this question, right? Mm-hmm. Just because Draw Play Dave drew me in anime style, that doesn't canonically make me a weeb. That doesn't make any sense.
Multiple times. A lot this weekend.
Yeah, he did it multiple times.
The revolution came to the Discord is what happened. It was amazing. I decided to have a nice night and not watch Sunday Night Football, leave my phone off for a bit. I came back to chaos in the Discord. Absolute chaos. Draw Play Dave was responsible for some lovely drawings in there. But so for Arif's beloved anime corner, as a newly canonical weeb, this should be an easy question to answer. What anime or manga would be a good parallel to the Viking season so far? Started off poorly for the weirdest reasons, before things start coming together and look good before the hero is lost. And how does it end?
This is just like basic hero storytelling. I mean, this is literally Joseph Campbell's Hero with a Thousand Faces. This is what happens in like Star Wars and in almost every Marvel comic and whatever. It's just storytelling. Now, mind you, because TV shows and in particular anime, from what I can tell, from what I've been told, are a lot more episodic and serialized. You're going to, which, okay, those are kind of contradictions on some terms of definitions, but you know what I mean. Because of that, you don't tend to have like as obvious of those moments. Sometimes they occur within episodes. Sometimes they occur over the course of story arcs. Sometimes they occur over the course of a season. Sometimes they just kind of don't occur. But like, you know, based on what people tell me about popular anime, like Dragon Ball Z, I think is what it's called. Naruto, you know, anime like that. That's like all of them. like it's not working out sometimes for kind of weird reasons. Maybe someone cast a stupid spell or something, which just happens. This isn't me invoking like some witchcraft corner. That's just what happens in anime sometimes. And then you get it back, you get your groove going. And the hero is winning whatever fight or whatever that they're in. They're playing the right Yu-Gi-Oh cards, right? You know, that deal. And then suddenly their confidence is shattered by something that seemingly is impossible to come back from. Now, critically, because the ones I've been describing are primarily children's shows, the hero always comes back from that in some way. I don't know that the Vikings like have that. So you probably have to go to...
The Jets might have that.
Okay, but like Hero was doing a lot of work. But I'm sure, you know, it's as I'm told, it's a very diverse medium. I'm sure there's more anime for non-child audiences where the hero actually does fail in the end and stuff like that. You know, I wouldn't know. I don't watch, but
clearly.
Yeah, I'm confident that there's at least one or two pessimistic anime out there where everything just kind of sucks in the end and you just kind of have to deal with it.
Yeah. At least two.
At least two.
Yeah.
Certainly.
The Minnesota mathematician asks, for the Vikings linear Super Bowl trophy corner.
Oh, geez.
We're back on
we're in the
Super
thick of
Bowl, you know, the linear Super Bowl trophy corner. We're back on the linear Super Bowl. The Vikings do have one now, and we can continue to defend it here. Since Kevin O'Connell became the head coach of the Vikings and struck a deal with a witch to win the Super Bowl, the Vikings have gone 17-9. Their 26th game in that run being yesterday's win over the Packers. Since the Packers fans have been known to say that, quote, beating us is the Vikings winning their Super Bowl, end quote, is it possible that the spell was cast incorrectly and we just won our Super Bowl that Kevin O'Connell paid for? We now know that the sacrifice Kevin O'Connell bargained was the future of Cousins as a Viking. My guess is that Cousins will be moved this offseason to another team where he will win the actual Super Bowl. Also, for those keeping track at home, the Vikings now have one linear Super Bowl trophy, and the Bengals and Jaguars both each have a quarter linear Super Bowl trophy after the offseason decay and the fact that one of the half linear Super Bowl of trophies vanished into the ether when the Packers beat the Vikings last year in Week 16.
Okay, so first of all, the math is becoming complicated, and I'm very confident that that's my fault. I'm certain that I'm the one that introduced a half-life decay into this equation for no reason at all. absolutely no reason.
But moreover, for Arif's Magic Corner, ever since renouncing Magic last year and refusing to answer questions about it, Arif has had a worse year than James. Not true.
Arguable. Yeah, we can't prove that. James has had a catastrophically bad year.
Yeah.
But
you know when you're talking about quarterbacks or talking about football stuff and you get to say in the conversation, your year has been in the conversation. Did he anger the baby witches so much that they have cursed him until he returns to the magic shop he parked in front of and stocks back up on potions, supplies, and broomsticks? For the record, I was the one who parked in front.
James is the one who parked in front of this shop.
I parked in front of the magic shop.
I just picked the sushi place. It happened to be close to a shop of some sort that I guess sells grimoires or whatever, right? I don't know.
Arif claims he had no idea that was something they sold.
And I, like a reasonable person going to a sushi place, parked in the parking next to the sushi place. Like that's like a normal thing that I did. Was not aware of the shop. I go in, I wait for James. James apparently parks in front of a witch bookstore.
Yep.
I didn't ask him to do that. I don't know why he did that.
It's one of the funniest. Oh my God. It was one of the funniest things getting back to the car.
And he revealed this to me and I was like, you've got to be kidding. Yep. Come on.
One of the best moments of last year was the reveal on what had happened. I don't think Alyssa had ever been more happier in her life. It's like, you realize that we parked in front of a Wiccan bookstore, right? Like, what are you talking? And we looked, oh my good Lord, it is. Yeah.
I choose to believe that Minneapolis is weird enough that you're just always going to be in the proximity of one. That's probably what happened.
And my thought was, it was a place in Northeast. They probably don't have parking. I should park on the street. And I did, in front of an occult bookstore.
Whatever.
Finally,
you were the one who parked there.
I was, as a matter of fact.
I'm just saying, this in contravention of the question, you were the one who parked there, not me.
Finally, this episode, we have Michael, who ends the mailbag with, as the producer of the Norse Code podcast, one might liken you to the GM of the Vikings for the Norse Code franchise. Clearly, this season has gone off the rails, and I think I have identified the casual indicator.
It's not every metaphor works, okay? I don't know that I would call James the general manager of the Vikings, of the Norse Code.
Shut up, pleb. When we examine PVOA, which is parking value over average, Arif's performance
how is that a reasonable metric for a podcast?
Arif's performance this year has been a series of storied failures that apparently have been the driver of the Vikings' failures this season. Like the Vikings' turnover ratio, Arif has coughed up his car in so many unanticipated ways that through his magic corner, this luck has apparently been hexed upon the Vikings. This has left both the Vikings, all but an observer from the couch, for the forthcoming playoffs, and Arif an easy mark for a poor performance in trading jousts with Justice Mosqueda over the course of their Vikings-Packers episodes this season. What course of action?
I don't think Justice made a joke about my car, which, lost opportunity, man. I was dunking on him all episode.
I love the Justice interviews. I always enjoy them. But what course of action will you take to restructure the Norse Code franchise and get the Vikings back on track for a future Super Bowl winning season, culminating in a celebratory plunge down a cowboy butter water slide?
Oh my God. Okay. Before James answers, I just want to be that's not how DVOA works, okay? DVOA
That's your problem. That's your problem with all of this.
Is independent. Like, I'm just saying, if we're going to evaluate me by parking value over average, an unreasonable method by which to evaluate a podcaster, just want to be clear. If we're going to do that, the way defense adjusted value over average works is it removes luck from the number that they give to a team. And so what you've already clearly indicated is that I got unlucky with the way that the world interacted with my car, I guess is the best way to put that.
I mean, if you're looking at that, the reason why my PVOA is so high
is because you have a garage. I know where this is going. Okay? I get it.
It's locked. It's nice. It's a wonderful option.
Anyway. Okay, so here's the thing. The place everybody parks in front of their house. Where I am, that's a thing people do. No one else's car was stolen. This is clearly luck driven, right? Like, this is not like I made a poor parking choice. I was the only one to park in front of my house in the neighborhood. That's not what happened. Everybody parks in front of their house in the neighborhood. My car was the one that was stolen twice. Like, that's, and obviously, it's not random, right? It's because it's the Hyundai thing. But that's like, that was not information that's accessible to me at the moment I bought that Hyundai. So that's just bad luck in a lot of ways. So if we're going to use DVOA as the metaphor here, my parking value over average would have been fine. It would have been fine. It would have been league average. It would have been a 0.0. I would have ranked 16th out of 32. It's fine. It's just I was the victim of bad luck, which you acknowledge over the rest of the course of your question. So come on, let's get real here. First of all, not a reasonable method by which to evaluate podcasters. 1. 2, my PVOA is just fine.
Well,
James, go ahead and answer this stupid question.
You had a couple of rough days.
A couple? Days?
Sorry, I expected the really white man moment there. That could have been the best day of our lives right there. Just really. Look, I think the way to turn all of this around is to have a live show in Denver, Colorado, November 17th, 7 p.m. over at the Damn Grill. The Damn Grill. DAMGRILLE. That is what you should do to turn this team around, to turn the season around. We're going to go there. We're going to make fun of Russell Wilson. Maybe we'll get some nano water. I've got a couple of gifts, and we're giving away 2 tickets to the game. So I think that's the best way to get things on track, is to go to Denver and find ourselves, or get lost.
Sure. I'm going to go to Denver and I'm going to rent a car. Guess what kind?
It's going to be a Tesla, isn't it?
No. Nope. Already did that. Didn't love it.
I can't stand riding in them. I've ridden in them a lot for like cabs. Every time it's like, no, I am too tall for this. This is going to suck. Especially if I have to go in the back seat. No.
Yeah, it's so I've probably ridden in a Tesla, but I only remember driving one. It's just so unintuitive. I hate it. I already ranted about this. I think in a
Super Bowl episode,
February episode.
Yeah. Well, that is going to be it for this episode of Norse Code. I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as you can for what the subject matter was this particular episode. Arif, what do you have to plug?
So over at Wide Left, I've got a piece on just following the fallout from the Green Bay game, both a game review and kind of a meditation on what it means to be a Vikings fan. It's just smart to write those every season, I guess. But yeah, so technically it is a game recap of the Packers game, but most of it is occupied by like talking about like how the Vikings kind of engineer themselves to hurt you as a fan. So that's up there. I'm going to be writing for Bolts from the Blue for a month while my friend who was on the show to help us preview the Chargers, while he's on paternity leave. So congratulations to him. I'm going to be filling in for him a little bit. And mostly going to be game recaps there of Chargers games. So, if that's something you're interested in, by all means, check it out. And then also after the Vikings kind of resolve whatever the quarterback situation is, I'm going to write a piece on that.
Yeah. And I'm going to try to convince Arif that we need to see Creed this summer. I can't do one of the dates.
That's not happening. And you already mentioned that you already mentioned that you're too busy on the date that you picked, so it wouldn't matter anyway. So don't worry about it.
There's 2 Minnesota dates. One of them I can't make. We can talk about the other one. You've been talking about Switchfoot all season.
Okay, but not like because I want to see Switchfoot.
You were meant to live for so much more.
Oh, Jesus.
And with that is going to be the end of this episode. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. We will be back later this week to preview the next game. But for Arif, my name is James. Thank you guys so much. And please remember that you should probably just put that in a garage next time. And we'll be back later this week. Norse Code is the largest and only division of Norse Code LLC. You can find Norse Code on the Daily Norseman, SB Nation's Vikings blog at dailynorseman.com. You can also find it on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and wherever fine podcasts are aggregated. Our Vikings blogger extraordinaire and generally useful human is Arif Hassan of Pro Football Network, and he can be found at Arif Hassan NFL. I am your producer and host, and my name is James Pagashnik. You can find me at the show's official Twitter feed at NorseCodeDN or my personal account at Big Mono. If you'd like to donate a few bucks to the show, you can do so in a few different ways. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode and donate there. For $3.50 a month, you get bonus material and more. You can also go to paypal.me/NorseCode for a one-time donation, or you can go to norsecode.threadless.com and pick up some Norse Code merchandise. Any questions or comments that cannot fit in a tweet can be sent to norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. On behalf of the Norse Code staff, thank you so much for listening.
Our formula is this.
All things are possible through the power of Ben DiNucci.